Tim Brighouse, who many of you will know, former Chief Education Officer, more recently London Commissioner of Schools for a while, and I, about 18 months ago, were asked to write a paper for a group called the New Vision Group. It's one of those sort of, I suppose a think tank might be quite a grandiose name for it, but a group of like-minded people who got together to look at the state of education. So we were asked to produce a paper around teacher professional development, and we talked to a few people about this, and what we discovered was that there was a number of other groups that were doing the same thing. So when Ian put up this notion of a Royal College of Teaching, we've been talking to the people who've been in these three groups that are now looking at establishing such an organisation. We actually think that this is a good thing, you know, because Tim and I are not out to set anything up ourselves. We're out to try and change people's minds or move people's thinking in this direction. And we started from a number of premises. First of all, which we've already referred to in part this morning. First of all, when you talk to teachers about professional development, most of them give a very negative response to it. This is not the case in those schools that do really interesting things, and are often the schools represented at conferences like this, where we're talking about the mass of schools. And what we're interested in is systemic change. It may be that from individual schools doing really interesting things, you can get it into a systemic context. But what we're interested in is across the whole system, how we can really think about change. So we looked at that first of all. Then we looked at the government's attempts over the last 20 years, which some of you would have been involved in, to do something about this. We've had since the mid-90s a plethora of initiatives, and I'm sure some of you have sat at road shows and things like that as one new consultation paper came after another. There's been three major governmental initiatives in the area of CPD, and they've all fizzled out, either because the government fizzled out or because civil servants lost interest or the money wouldn't go, and so on. And one of the things we're absolutely convinced is that governments are not very good at running CPD. So that's the first thing. And why do teachers need to have governments to do it anyway? Teachers, like other professional communities, could set up their own arrangements. They could create their own standards. They could create their own systems of accreditation and so forth. And so what we've done in the paper that you've got in your files there suggests, we talked about setting up a National Teachers Institute. We didn't want to get involved in the royal business, because the danger with royal is that Mr. Gove or anybody else would have to get involved if it was called royal, because I mean royalty doesn't itself decide something becomes a royal. It has to consult with the government of the day. And I think some of the groups that have been rather glibly talking about a Royal College of Teaching haven't thought through some of the actual practicalities. So maybe royal would be a good idea if you could get it without a lot of fuss and bother and Gove and people like that. But we say, why can't teachers set up their own independent organisation? And it would not be we suggest this is not a providing group, because there's plenty of people around who could do the providing. But it would be the group that was creating frameworks. And we talked this morning about curriculum for in-service training. In the paper here, we actually suggested that one of the functions of such a group would be to suggest what the curriculum of in-service training or CPD might be, as well as the accreditation arrangements that would go with it and so forth. And one of the things we're keen on is, we believe that the linkage between schools and the universities is something that needs to be much more significantly strengthened through CPD than is currently the case. We are a learning profession. We work closely, the profession has to work closely with universities. At some stages in our history, like for example bringing primary teacher training into the academy, that's been a major developmental point. The status of primary teachers today is significantly enhanced by the fact that they are graduates and have gone through a university preparation. We would like to see that come back in for continuing professional development. What would those links look like? So that's why we think that teachers should set up their own body, create their own frameworks, and they needn't be beholden to any government of any persuasion. That's not anti-government to say that. You know, it's not to say that this is an organisation would be anti-government. It would be collaborative, but it would be independent of the foibles and the temporary interests that successive Secretary of States bring to their office. Now, of course, there could be a long debate about how you get such a thing to happen, and I think that's more. I think that goes beyond the remit of this particular conference today. But in the paper there, we just suggest where the lever points for that might be.
Thank you very much.